Greetings! Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. My name is Steve Deace. What is your name? Maybe one day I'll learn it. His name is Todd Erzin. His name is Aaron McIntyre. And we have a typical Wednesday show lined up here for you. You can, of course, get ready for Buy, Sell, or Hold. That will begin at the bottom of the hour, provided Aaron's montage that we'll get to in a moment isn't so runneth over that I need more time to discuss what is in there. And then we'll get to as many of your Buy, Sell, or Hold suggestions as we can. And then the ones that we didn't have time to get to, they will be saved for the overtime later today at blazetv.com/Deace for Blaze TV subscribers. Daniel Horowitz, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, will be joining us here in the final segment of the show. As I teased yesterday, we're going to be discussing what we are learning from the final, I shouldn't say final, but the most recent 800 pages of Pfizer docudumps that have been unveiled. And boy, howdy, some heads need to be swinging from trees. After a fair trial, of course. Yes. So we will discuss that with Daniel coming up a little bit later on. Want to discuss with you from our friends over at Eden Pure. You know, they've got their outstanding thunderstorm air purifier. Well, now they want to do something about your rising heating bills this summer. They have a powerful heating technology used by the Eden Pure Gen 40 heater. It's already helping thousands of people save money on their heating bills. It's an advanced, they've got their advanced heating engineering team, has combined an infrared heating system and a convective heating system into one space heater. These two technologies work together to heat a home better than your current furnace, boiler, baseboard heat, and other space heaters do by using two forms of heating technology to heat a room. The Gen 40 heater makes you feel warmer and reduces your heating bills. Never be cold again. Save money month after month with our friends over at Eden Pure. So you can get an additional $50 off the Gen 40 sale price with my discount code Steve50. Steve50 is the discount code when you visit EdenPureDeals.com, EdenPureDeals.com, and use the discount code Steve50 to save an additional $50 off the sales price at EdenPureDeals.com. All right, and with that, let's get to it. Here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Mr. Zelensky Goes to Washington Again. Ukrainian green shirt reality TV host turned President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Washington, D.C. again yesterday to meet with American lawmakers. Zelensky was also on Fox News last night and told American taxpayers not to worry about where their money is going.
Spend all your money to the weapon, to the drones, to the society, to the pensions, and etc. And don't cry.
Speaker Johnson also met with Zelensky and said this.
I have asked the White House since the day that I was handed the gavel as Speaker for clarity. We need a clear articulation of the strategy to allow Ukraine to win. And thus far, their responses have been insufficient. They have not provided us the clarity and the detail that we have requested over and over since literally 24 hours after I was handed the gavel as Speaker of the House.
Anyway, John Daly, your thoughts?
I think all of us on the tours and everything, we all want Daddy Trump back.
On the actual campaign trail, Ron DeSantis held a town hall in Iowa last night where he hit Trump for cowering out of debates.
It's a different Donald Trump than 15 and 16. You know, back then he was colorful, but it was really America first about the policies. Now, a lot of it's about him. And when he's doing this and says that debating Hillary Clinton after Access Hollywood was like an example of bravery that some general told him was more significant than soldiers who fight and die in war, that is offensive and that is wrong. Debating is the bare minimum that a political candidate should do. And I would note, Donald Trump has refused to debate throughout this campaign. He doesn't think he owes it to Iowans. He doesn't think he owes it to Granite Staters to show up and debate and answer questions. He doesn't think he should come and have to answer questions from voters. A lot of times he'll come in, give a speech, and leave. He's not going to visit all 99 counties. Nobody is entitled to this nomination. You've got to earn this nomination. And part of the way you do it is you show up, you answer people's questions, you shake their hands, and you show them that you care about the future of their communities. I care about the future of these communities. I care about the future of this country. I'm not running for me. this is not about my issues. It's about your issues, your family's issues, and the future of this country.
DeSantis was also asked about that satanic display in Iowa's state capitol building.
So it's interesting. I heard this, and then I was like, well, how did it get there? Is that even a religion? And lo and behold, the Trump administration gave them approval to be under the IRS as a religion. So that gave them the legal ability to potentially do it. So I don't know what the legislature, how they analyzed it, but it very well may be because of that ruling under Donald Trump that they may have had a legal leg to stand on. My view would be that's not a religion that the founding fathers were trying to create. But I do think that IRS ruling, I was really surprised to see that they did that.
Meanwhile, Nikki Haley appears to be tempted to take a page out of Trump's playbook. That debate scheduled to take place in Iowa ahead of the Iowa caucuses is in doubt, as Haley appears to be using Trump as her shield not to debate DeSantis one-on-one.
I think that he has gotten a pass on not doing these other debates, but I don't think you get a pass when it comes to an Iowa debate or a New Hampshire debate or a South Carolina debate, because these are the states that are voting. It's very different. They want to be able to see their candidates side by side. You can't go and hide when it comes to a debate in the state that's voting. And so I would highly expect that he would want to show up for Iowans. I would expect Iowans would be highly offended if he didn't. And so, you know, he needs to show up for the debate stage the same way I need to show up for a debate stage in South Carolina and New Hampshire and Iowa as well.
Back in D.C., Hunter Biden spoke in the aftermath of his new indictments.
For 6 years, MAGA Republicans, including members of the House committees who are in a closed-door session right now, have impugned my character, invaded my privacy, attacked my wife, my children, my family, and my friends. They have ridiculed my struggle with addiction, they have belittled my recovery, and they have tried to dehumanize me, all to embarrass and damage my father, who has devoted his entire public life to service. My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad.
I don't believe you.
Switching gears, Dr. Anthony Fauci was interviewed by the BBC recently.
Do you still go there? Do you
No.
You don't practice anymore, do you?
I don't, no.
Why?
A number of complicated reasons.
Go on. We have a whole corridor.
First of all, I think my own personal ethics on life are, I think, enough to keep me going on the right path. And I think that there are enough negative aspects about the organizational church that you're very well aware of. I'm not against it. I identify myself as a Catholic. I was raised, I was baptized, I was confirmed, I was married in the church. My children were baptized in the church. But as far as practicing it, it seems almost like a pro forma thing that I don't really need to do.
And finally, a rare feel-good story. This is the price of Pfizer and Moderna stocks over the past year. As you can see, Pfizer has dropped over 50%, Moderna over 60%. And that's what happened while we were away.
I am not sure I'm going to get through that montage in one segment. I will do my best. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Bonner Private Wines. Check out their Sunai Elagico Malbec. They exclusively import it from the Calaki Mountains in Argentina. Why does that matter to you? Because that's the third highest vineyard in the world, which means it is highly rated at 91 points, so there's no fining or filtration done when producing it. That preserves its true natural taste. Also has 10 times the resveratrol levels of the and 93% less sugar than the red wines you're buying at the grocery store. Bonner Private Wines is the sole importer of this amazing Malbec. You can get a bottle of this exclusive wine by visiting bonnerprivatewines.com/Steve and become a member of the Bonner Private Wine Partnership. But act fast. This one always sells out quickly, particularly around the holidays. And if you visit bonnerprivatewines.com/Steve, you'll get chances to get other wines there for over 50% off and free shipping. You can't beat it. Just go to bonnerprivatewines.com/Steve, BONNER, bonnerprivatewines.com/Steve. All right. Where to begin with Aaron's montage? I see some people on the right, many of them are elected officials, are attempting to draw this distinction. And I just want to make sure I'm on the record right now that I reject this distinction. All right? This idea that we're not anti-Zelensky, we are pro-border security. We just want to prioritize our own country's borders before somebody else's. I just want to make it very clear, especially after what you just saw from that scoundrel in Aaron's montage. I am absolutely anti-Zelensky. I'm anti-Zelensky. Just want to go on the record. And I'm going to pause here so that our show's promoter at Media Matters can bookmark this for when I make their week in review, mass email for like the 40th week in a row. Okay? So just give me a second. Can we pause? What was her name? Do you remember what her name was, Aaron? What was her name?
Peyton. Good friend Peyton.
All right, let's let Peyton catch up. We'll just pause. Okay. Peyton should be good. Bookmark that. I'm anti-Zelensky. Yeah. And no, that doesn't mean I'm pro-Putin. It means I'm a Christian, and I understand we live in a fallen world. And that means sometimes, in fact, depending on the condition of your culture or the era in which you live globally, oftentimes there are no good guys. Sometimes there's no good guys. Sometimes it's just bad on bad. Sometimes you're a Michigan fan and you're just watching Ohio State and Notre Dame. There's no good guys. There's no good guys. Or you're an Ohio State fan, you're watching Michigan, Notre Dame. There's no good guys, right? Sometimes there's just no good guys, nobody to root for. And you're like, I guess I'm interested, because it's on, but I have no rooting interest and it's not something I feel like dying for. So I just want to make it clear. I am anti-Zelensky and I don't care. It's not my fight. I don't care. Do I even have to do what would all of right-wing media do today if someone had if a celebrity on the left had produced a clip and referred to Daddy Obama? Do I even have to do that? Do I have to do that?
No.
I mean, is that asked and answered, Your Honor? We all know. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And
isn't he like some sort of picture of the atypical masculine, ultra-masculine golfer or something?
John Daly?
Yeah.
For what reason would that be? Because he chain smokes, or what's that reason?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Tell me.
Okay.
That's how he's portrayed.
Just let Daly be Daly there and move on.
Yeah. That level of idolatry, though, I have a hard time moving on from it, no matter who it is. And even when it would financially benefit me to do so, I have a hard time ignoring it, especially when Aaron puts it right in my face.
Then you never talk about anything else.
Well, and we kind of don't.
Want to.
Yeah, and we kind of don't. Yes, indeed. Okay. Let's talk about Hunter Biden for a minute. I have to say, I had not seen that clip before. It was on. He was saying these things on the screens at the gym this morning, but the sound was off, and so I did not hear them. And so this is the first attempt that I've had to hear what he was actually saying when he spoke to the media earlier after refusing to show up for his deposition that he was subpoenaed for. And I got to say, there's a part of me, I'd be lying if I didn't say I almost admire this. Who's the guy that who does Tim Matheson play? Is it Animal House?
Yeah, he's
when Dean Wormer calls him into the office.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And he goes on this like gaslighting rant. Well, I will not permit you to besmirch the name of the United States of America. Yes. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
One of the just classic, turn it around gaslight rants in cinematic history. Right. Okay. And there is a certain element of that where Hunter Biden is concerned. Understand, we only know about this guy's issues because he was proud enough to preserve them for us. The woman who ran for legislature, where was it, in Virginia? And she was doing her own OnlyFans account where she was literally taking money to perform sex acts on camera. All right. And then the media said that her private life was exposed. No, she exposed her private life. She signed up for a site with the intent of exposing herself and everything else and her private life. That's what you do there, right?
Yes.
The idea that she was exposed, Republicans pounce, and she was exposed. She was on OnlyFans, which, in fairness to the media, they may have confused with OnlyFeds. But no, she was on OnlyFans, and that's what she was doing there, exposing her private life to everybody for money. I mean, understand, this guy is casting himself as the victim. And we have literally watched him snort cocaine off a Russian hooker's ass. Understand that. Understand that depending on where you are right now in life and relationships, depending on where you're at right now. You don't know. Let me make this point even more adamant. This will make this point even more adamant. All right, Todd's bracing. Todd's like, don't. I know what you're going to do, but don't do it. I have to do it. I have to do this. All right, Todd, look the other way.
I'm in. Whatever.
All you need to know. I can't. What a messed up era we live in. Goodness gracious. All you need to know about what Hunter Biden has done to preserve his proclivities and his peccadillos and his exposure is that the penis Lindsey Graham saw the most this year was Hunter Biden's. That's all you need to know.
I'll allow it.
That's all you need to know. The penis Lindsey Graham saw the most this year was Hunter Biden's. Because we all saw it. It was everywhere. Couldn't log on to Twitter if you have a Twitter account. Couldn't log on to it earlier this year without seeing it. It was impossible to avoid it. You'd have to go in there and literally mute Hunter Biden from your account. His stuff was absolutely everywhere because his stuff has been absolutely everywhere. And for him to stand up there this morning like Tim Matheson in Animal House and just lecture us. See, there's a part. It is. Is it possible we have lived through Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, men with different politics, but very similar personalities? All right. Is it possible that even Todd and you and I's lifetime, having lived through both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, that what we just saw from Hunter Biden in that clip in Aaron's montage is the most impressive, and I mean this in a gallows humor kind of way, the most impressive level of chutzpah that it takes that you have ever seen in this era from a political figure? No.
I actually have a real reason for that.
Why is that?
Because I think the chutzpah that was shown back then was when they were actually on a razor's edge on whether or not there would be consequences or not.
Okay.
There's no consequences. But Mike Johnson and guys like him, the shamelessness now, it's all in now. We know we can get away with this all the time.
In other words, you're saying
this is just a fig leaf anyways.
Okay, in other words, you're saying those guys kind of blazed the trail.
There was real risk involved.
Okay,
there.
when those guys kind of blazed the trail of chutzpah. And at this point now, I mean, that's the Appian way. That road is paved.
Yes.
He knows he can just, skip to my loo down that street, is what you're saying. Down that very broad road.
That's a pleasurable thoroughfare he's riding down right now. Look at what you will not make fun of my addiction. Like, look at, we've paved the way for that. All kinds of addictions. We bought into that on the right and how they're a victim of that. What? You're a crackhead, man.
I mean, that clip, dude. I mean, that is, and he's clean shaven. And to say all of that, imagine the level of sociopath you have to be to say, like I knew what I was going to say about Lindsey Graham, and I just couldn't keep a straight face. I mean, I couldn't keep up with it. Okay. Imagine the level of sociopath Hunter Biden is, that he is able to do that. And this isn't Tim Matheson, 40 years ago filming Animal House. How many takes do you think that took? How many takes do you think that took where they're literally laughing as he's doing it for the first time right there on the set? How many times did they have to stop and they were laughing, eating silly, take a break, take a smoke break, do another shot of Jim Beam? I mean, to get their minds right to perform that level of gaslighting in that scene. How many takes did that take? He stands up there, dude, live on every national media outlet in America and pulls that thing off flawlessly with no remorse, no self-awareness, no shame, nothing. That is incredible levels. That is an absolute sociopath.
Actually, no. I disagree with that part. He's not a sociopath.
Okay.
He watches the news. He turned on the TV in the last couple of days and say, over in Iowa, there's a damn statue of a demon in the state capitol, and they won't do anything about it. I think I'm good here. That's what's happening.
I don't even think he knows there's a statue of a demon in the Iowa state capitol. I don't. I think you're probably giving him too much credit. But I hear what you're saying.
Where are the consequences for anything, Steve?
There is no consequences for anything, provided that you are.
He knows this.
Provided that you are in right standing with the spirit of the age. Now, right now, he is facing real consequences because they're trying to get rid of his old man. Because the spirit of the age is concerned that the old man has outlived his usefulness, and he and Hunter Biden is the cudgel for that. I mean, for him to stand up there and blame MAGA Republicans, his latest round stems from indictments from California. A
lot of MAGA Republicans there.
Yes, and of course they're in complete control of the legal apparatus there in the Golden State.
But those aren't consequences. That's manipulation.
Fair. Although at this point I'm so desperate for any consequences, I think I'm signing up for manipulation just to see somebody punished for whatever reason possible, just to see that it can still happen once. Somebody except for the people that believe that we do, for example. But that clip is it is one of the most astonishing examples of gaslighting I have seen in my career, and consider what we cover every single day. I mean, that is saying something.
It's destiny. It's just destiny.
Meaning this is the fulfillment of what's become of us as a people.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is an excellent transition to Anthony Fauci.
As a Catholic, I'll just say this, and then I'll respond to whatever you say. That's the most honest that man has been about anything.
I completely agree.
I'm fine with that. I mean, and he is the way he is, and he knows he can get away with it for the reasons I just got talking about other things. But he has been more honest about that than anything.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said, and I have used a lot of demonic imagery and characterizations when discussing Anthony Fauci the last few years. And I want you to know, zero of it was for rhetorical flourish or embellishment or, to draw an audience, by being absurd, by illustrating absurdity by being absurd. It was all said literally. Because you know a tree by its fruit. And someone's worldview is not what they proclaim. It's not what they say. It's who they are. And that leads to what they do. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. What you think about all day long and the way you think about it, you will eventually become. Todd is correct. That is the most honest thing Anthony Fauci has said to us since many of us first learned his name in March of 2020. Except here's where the demonic stuff was unnecessary. It actually falls short of what you just heard from Anthony Fauci. What you just heard from Anthony Fauci is actually straight up satanic. It is straight up satanic. I no longer require transcendent accountability. I am a law unto myself.
Yep.
I am my own master. I know on my own what is right and wrong. So for those of you, and I don't know how many of those of you are still in this audience, chances are we drove you away a long time ago, but if you're still one of those people, I don't understand how a loving God can let people or send people to hell. Praise hell. Praise the fact. Be grateful it exists, so that you do not have to spend eternity with unrepentant fiends like this. Because a transcendent God is able to have both his grace and his justice get the last word simultaneously. Heaven is the expression of his grace getting the last word, and hell is the manifestation of his justice doing so simultaneously. He is saying, I am my own God. He is literally saying this.
And Trump let him be president of the United States basically for an entire year.
For pretty much an entire year.
How do you like them apples?
Yeah, pretty much an entire year. He is saying, I'm my own God. Demons worship the enemy as God. They promote idolatry. So you can see demonic influence often with idolatry. The worship of trinkets, idols, relics, systems, hems of garments of human beings, that's idolatry. When we get to the point, though, that we just flat out worship ourselves, that we say, I will be like the Most High. I will, or I have ascended. That is the language of Lucifer. That is Luciferian, and that is what you hear there from Anthony Fauci. That is beyond demonic now. That is satanic. Straight up paraphrase of what the enemy himself says about himself in the scriptures themselves. And if you retcon the last few years, it makes everything make sense. And boy, the title we came up with for the book, Faustian Bargain, turned out to be it was a play on words. It was a pun when we came up with that. No, brother, it was more than that. It was prophetic. Yeah. And we didn't even realize the level of prophetic it was when we came up with that title in March of 2021. Now we can sit here 2.5 years later, and Anthony Fauci's words himself indicate prophecy has been fulfilled.
When you hear him in June or July of 2021 saying, if you're criticizing me, you're really criticizing the science. Yeah. It makes a lot more sense.
Correct. I am the science. I am. By the way, what being said, called themselves I am? Who did that originally?
That would be the one true God.
That would be the one true God. Moses says, whom should I go to the people and tell them sent me? Tell them I am sent you. That's what I am. I am. That's why non-Messianic Jews in the New Testament wanted Jesus arrested when he said, before Abraham was, I am. He is saying, I am God. Mm-hmm. Okay? So he's either a blasphemer or he is God. There's no in between. Jesus is either God made flesh, Emmanuel, as we sing this time of year, or he is a blasphemer and by the law should have been stoned. No in between. No in between. That's similar language is used by the enemy, albeit from the opposite side of the septic tank, from the upside down. And I am the science. I am the truth. I am the one you need to listen to more than anybody else, and including your own conscience. And look how many of our countrymen agreed. And now the songs that they sung to him, the trinkets that were sold, everything we witnessed in 2021 all makes sense. It's conditioning for the one who will come, who will really mean, I am the one to worship, if you know what I'm saying. And you can see more than ever before, the world is prepped and ready for such an event.
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to skip the script and tell you straight up. Tommy John's the best underwear I've ever bought. It's absolutely fantastic. That's why they've got over 20 million pairs sold, thousands of 5-star reviews, and they've gotten like over 97% approval from female customers because they got an entire line for women as well. It's just fantastic. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers or even fans. They've got fanatics. And it's the absolute best, most comfortable, sturdiest underwear I've ever bought. And I'd highly recommend it. I cannot give a better endorsement to a product than when it comes on board. And typically they'll let me sample it for a while, either beforehand or right as it comes on board. Or if it's like coffee and it's not my thing, then we let Aaron sample it, so that we have some background, personal background with that product before we talk to you about it. And then every now and then we encounter one that I love the product so much, I just keep getting more and more of it out of my own pocket. Tommy John is one of those products. That's why their motto is your new favorite underwear guaranteed. Same thing happened to me. Became my new favorite underwear. And I guarantee it'll be the same for you as well. So right now for the holidays, shop TommyJohn.com/Steve right now and get 20% off your first order. That's 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Steve. That's TommyJohn.com/Steve. All right, before we get to buy, sell, or hold, I told you there was going to be a lot more in your montage I wanted to comment on than I knew going in. I want to address, well, I guess we can discuss overall both the town hall that DeSantis did yesterday at CNN. I have no idea, given it was on CNN, I have no idea how many people watched it. So I thought he was, though, I thought he was terrific. And I don't know how anybody else, doesn't mean yet may not be your favorite candidate in the race, but I just don't know how you could come away from that unless you just have if you're one of those, he was disloyal for running folks, and if that's you, cool. But for anybody else, regardless of who you decide to support, I don't know how you could not come away impressed with the way that he performed in that town hall. But, we were talking yesterday about the whole Bud Light thing. And I want to give some props to some of our colleagues in our industry. Matt Walsh, Dana Lash, a couple of them. And I'm sure there's a few others. They're the two that I saw the most. Call BS on, okay, so you bought off Dana White and Kid Rock, so now Bud Light is great. And our own colleague, Oron McIntyre, was another one I saw call BS on that too. Okay. And I just wanted to say, I like seeing that. We have, Oron, not to be confused with Aaron. Oron said that, if the price of your soul basically is Kid Rock and Dana White getting bought off, then you deserve to lose. And I retweeted him with narrator that that's typically our price, and that's typically why we lose. That's typically what we do here. Okay, so but I wanted to reset that because it ties into what I wanted to talk about next. I know you've been all over the display in our State House right now.
Yes.
Okay. I have commented on it. Let me tell you why I have not commented on it as much as you have. Number one, I don't know what else to say given everything you're saying. You've kind of, you're basically speaking for me, so there's not much else for me to do other than just, what he said. Okay. But there's another broader thing happening here, and I think this entire story is in many respects a metaphor for just our failure as a movement in this generation on multiple fronts.
Yes.
All right. And here's the thing. Multiple things here can be true at the exact same time. Okay? Multiple things can be true here at the exact same time. Let's start with the meta thing. If you believe, and I said this on the show Monday when this first came up, let me reiterate this, because to me, the starting point of this conversation is the point I'm about to make. And I'm not, it's not that because it's my point that I think it's the starting point of the conversation. Meaning, I think it's the starting point of the conversation. That's why I'm making it my point. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes. Okay. If you believe the people that wrote the First Amendment meant for you to put a satanic display in public, then I just have a completely different view of history than you do. A completely different view of history.
Nailed it.
All right. I do not believe, pick a founding father. In fact, pick maybe the most licentious one, Benjamin Franklin. Pick maybe the most secular libertarian one, Thomas Paine. And I do not believe any of them. None of the men at the Constitutional Convention, none of the 56 signers of the Declaration, not a single one of them, none of them would have put or viewed the First Amendment as an expression of a satanic altar. Why don't we put an altar to Molech? It's a religion. Why don't we put an altar to Molech specifically regarding child sacrifice there? Why don't we do that? That's a religion. Of course they would not have done this.
Don't you remember that chapter in the Federalist Papers, though, Steve, where they said, you realize this is a trap door.
Correct.
If we give you religious freedom and you get to worship God, you have to worship the devil, too. I read that, didn't you?
That's in Federalist 66.
There? Yeah, I knew you'd remember it. Mind of a steel trap over there.
Indeed. Not what it used to be, but I can still remember Federalist 66. Yes. All right. That's the meta point. All right. But then you have to ask yourself, how did this occur? Okay. And all the ways that this is still sitting in our state house is indicative of the colossal failure of our side in this last generation or two. All of the ways. And no one's coming out of here unscathed. You can blame the church. You can blame the administrative state. You can blame the Republican Party. You can blame contemporary candidates. You can blame the previous administration. You can blame the current governor. No one here walks out of here without some accountability. It's a colossal failure. And you know, there's a moment in the New Testament when you'll notice that Christ spends much more time in the Gospels debating the Pharisees than he does Sadducees. In fact, it's a Sadducee, Caiaphas, who says, well, you know, better for one man to die than for the whole nation to perish. The Sadducees were the Democrats of that era. There were two political parties in the Sanhedrin that made up the Jewish religious order, and the Sadducees were more analogous to Democrats. They were into social public machinations. They had given up on an idea of a resurrection, which means they had given up on a judgment, which means they had kind of just given up on transcendence, basically.
They would have liked Anthony Fauci.
Exactly. I mean, they viewed themselves largely as just keepers of the public order, or some first century nascent form of social justice. Okay. The Pharisees were the true believers. And I know a lot of times in contemporary Christian evangelical circles, that a Pharisee is a bad word. But you have to understand the Pharisees, under a lot of rabbinic tradition, trace their history back to Ezra, who dedicated the temple. We rededicated the temple with Nehemiah. Okay, they were the keepers of the flame. They kept the Jewish religion alive during diasporas and exiles. They kept it alive.
That's the great pity of this all.
Yes, yeah. They kept. My understanding, I believe, they created the synagogue system during the eras of diaspora. True. They were the ones that believed. Okay, and so that's why they were the ones that questioned Jesus' messiahship more often than not, because they genuinely cared. Now, many of them didn't believe that he was Messiah, but they genuinely cared because they believed there would be a Messiah.
And if anybody was supposed to know, the Lord tells them, you're supposed to know.
That's right. During one of their many exchanges in the scriptures. And so the Pharisees, by the time of Christ, were kind of your Republicans in that two-party system. They still publicly acknowledged as a whole some form of transcendence. But a lot of that had been lost in legalities and technicalities. And you see this in one conversation that Christ has with a group of Pharisees. And he says to them in response, you tithe on every ounce of spice, every ounce of dill, every ounce of cumin, which you should do according to the law. He does not condemn them for wanting to keep the letter of the law. He does not. That's a very important distinction. All right. There's nothing wrong with wanting to keep the letter of the law, but to do so at the expense of the spirit of the law, he says, is why you're blind. You've rejected the larger narrative of the law, mercy, sacrifice.
Hierarchy of truth is going on here.
And you've exchanged it for like just this rote administrative process. Ezra was not dedicating a rote administrative process. He was dedicating God's house.
Amen.
Not a rote administrative process. He was dedicating God's home on earth. That's what he was dedicating. There's a larger narrative at play here. And while you're looking for every technicality and every I to be dotted and T to be crossed, you're missing the forest through the trees. Which is why I wanted to begin this at this. Take this conversation from, it's down here right now. Let's take it up here and ask a simple question. Similar to what Christ is saying to the Pharisees. You're arguing with me down here. Let's take it up here. Who else has the power to do the things you've watched me do? Answer that. Answer that, and then we'll work our way down to your technicalities from there. But don't start down here. Start up here. What's the larger point? Otherwise, you'll get bogged down. There's an old saying, the devil is in the what?
Details.
In the details. That's why, what does faith like a child mean? What are children not really all that curious about or care about? Details. They think up here. So let's bring it up here. Would George Washington plant a satanic altar?
No.
Would Thomas Jefferson do it? Would John Adams do it? Would Benjamin Franklin do it? Would Thomas Paine do it? Would John Hancock do it? Would Benjamin Rush do it?
It's so simple.
James Madison, James Monroe, would any of them do it? No. So start here, and then now begin. Let's go up here, and the tributaries of knowledge now flow from this reservoir, right? Okay? Because now we're rightly dividing things. Now we're rightly interpreting things, all right? Are you watching sick people get healed? Am I fulfilling the 61st chapter of Isaiah? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bring recovery of sight to the blind. Are these things happening? Are you seeing these things? Yes or no? Because if it's yes, then let's work our way down to here. If it's no, then there's no need to work our way down from here. You want to start from the bottom up, from the details, and move our way up. No. Start from the meta truth and then come down to the details.
And if you're starting at the bottom, even if you're a pastor or a believer, might I say your motivations are Faucian?
Correct. Even if you don't necessarily understand that yourself.
Right.
All right? You've been worked into a pharisaical fit. You have missed the spirit of the law. The point of the First Amendment was not to create some egalitarian religious structure, but was to create a system where we could freely worship the rights our God, the rights where, or the God where our rights come from, so that government later could not take those God-given rights away. That was the point. That's why they commissioned Geneva Bibles and sent them out to the 13 colonies. That's why they did that. Start from that. But what happens is when we start down here, well, as Ron DeSantis pointed out in that clip, well, I mean, now we've got, the Trump administration trying to be too clever by a half. And I don't fault them for that, by the way, because I promise you that was some conservative and probably rather large conservative legal advocacy group that thought they were too clever by a half.
Exactly.
Okay? And so now we're setting a precedent that they're a recognized religion. And so now, well, can we tear down an altar to a recognized religion? If we don't advance it, we don't acknowledge it, does that mean that we're going against our own stated principles? See, you're down here. You're down here. By the way, where's hell? Is hell up here or is it down here? Which direction's hell? Down. Start up here, not down here. So now we've got a Republican administration that was great on religious liberty, but thinks it's too smart by a half. That sets a precedent. Now other Republicans are like, well, what do we do? We're not sure what to do. Well, maybe this is actually grace. And no. Because if we start here with the people who wrote and ratified the First Amendment, put a satanic altar as recognition of that anywhere in America, and the answer is no, then we work our way from that point and understand we're wrong. But the problem that we have here is, and this is why I've not dwelled on this topic, many of the people addressing this don't care about the satanic altar. What they care about is ripping our governor, Kim Reynolds, because she endorsed against Donald Trump.
Yep.
And so everybody's wrong. Everybody's wrong. And you know what happens when I see an argument, like I just said with Zelensky and Putin? When I see an argument and there's no good guys, there's only bad guys, what do I have a tendency to do? When there's a movie and there's no redeemable characters, what do I do?
Check out.
Check out. I'm checked out. Nothing's honest. Nothing about this argument. You're trying to have an honest fight, but nothing's honest. Nothing is. This is all simply being advanced in many places, except for like maybe this guy, okay? Everywhere else is being largely advanced one way or the other, either to cover up something Republicans in the legislature should have never allowed, or to cover up something that Trump's administration should have never allowed. In either case, almost nobody's motives here are good, and I just don't care at that point, Aaron.
Yeah, if you start down here in the minutia and the details on this particular case, if you start down here and you're making this argument, well, it's the First Amendment, recognized religion. I don't like it. I find it reprehensible, but we live in a pluralistic society, blah, 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 blah. It's basically a derivative of the argument we made on the show 6-7 years ago, which is, ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun. What happens when the Satanists take control? Are they going to let us worship the one true God?
Right. They'll give us the manger in the corner.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Are the Satanists going to let us? No. Guys, we handed the rabbit a frickin' bazooka. The rabbit has rabies, and he's quoting Marx. He's never giving that back to us. I don't know how you can live in this country for the last 6-7 years and not recognize that. Know what time it is. And there's so many people that don't. But Steve, 90% of this online is what you just said. 90%. The 10% being what Todd is trying to do and has done. But 90% of it is, this is just a cudgel. If Todd Erzin or Kim Reynolds walked inside there today with their bare hands and tore down that statue, those same people would be saying, unhinged Trump, DeSantis supporter, infringing on First Amendment rights.
Look at her boots.
No serious.
Look at her boots.
Yes.
Look at her kinky boots.
There's
we'd be doing
nothing
that.
serious.
That's why that's why I've spent almost no serious amount of, this is the most amount of time I've spent discussing it is right now. And this is why.
But it's theologically fallacious, it's historically fallacious, it's logically fallacious, it's tactically fallacious.
Correct.
There's not one good reason for any of this to play out the way it did.
Correct.
So we're utterly broken.
Terrible
is what I'm
people
trying to tell
doing
you.
terrible things to other people, terrible people, terribly. Everybody's wrong on this story. Everybody is. Just about. Except for maybe you and a few others. More in a moment. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you, though hopefully not all at once, can let us know what you think about what we think. Just email the show, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also, if you are a podcast listener and you like the show, leave us a 5-star review. Thank you to every single one of you that have done that already. We appreciate you. And you can also, if you don't mind, hitting subscribe or on iTunes. That would be follow these days. And that way, every time we do a show, it shows up in your feed every single time we do a show. So you never miss one. And we appreciate those of you that have done that for us as well. And appreciate our friends over at Miracle Made. Winter is here. And that can also mean struggling with the right temperature to sleep. And you know, I love my Miracle Made sheets. I was talking earlier about Tommy John. And the best I can say about a client is when they let me try it for free, consider I go back and get more of these myself. Wife and I are about to do this with Miracle Made. That's how much we've loved these sheets, as we want to get more of them. We were actually just looking at packages the other day, as a matter of fact. All right. So these are fantastic temperature regulating sheets because they're inspired by silver infused fabrics that come from NASA. That makes temperature regulating bedding even more easier than it was in the past. By the way, as a nice side benefit here, these things also are self-cleaning. They prevent about 99% of the bacteria that your regular store-bought sheets will accumulate over time. But it's not just their functionality. they're incredibly comfortable. I mean, they're really sleek and nice to sleep on too. Save over 40% right now if you use the promo code DACE at checkout, and you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20% with that promo code. All right. So Miracle so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're not 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Go to trymiracle.com/DACE. Use the promo code DACE. You won't regret it, I promise. Trymiracle.com/DACE. Promo code DACE. That's trymiracle.com/DACE with the promo code DACE. All right, let's get to it. Time for some buy, sell, or hold. Aaron, thanks to many of you in the audience, we'll throw to you and I, Todd, a series of questions and lists and other things, and you and I will decide, are we going to buy that? Are we going to sell that? If, however, you decide to use your hold, knowing that it is a clear violation of the dude code not to take a stance, if you decide to use your hold, you will have to find out. You'll have to go through Lindsey Graham's search history to see how many times he did check out Hunter Biden's intimate revelations on Twitter earlier this year.
I'm not doing it, but that is one of the most benign ones you've ever
really
up. Yeah.
All right. Is this your reverse psychology way of trying to get me to say I'm out of ideas, so just stop doing it?
No.
Was that really lame, Aaron?
I was researching vacations to Orlando. I kind of missed out on first couple minutes here.
Because why wouldn't you do that during a live show that hundreds of thousands of people are tuned into? Why not?
That's just my out for not giving you an answer.
I appreciate that. All right, let's get to it. All right.
We will begin with John Baxter. The Haley campaign and the GOP establishment have rushed to create a narrative surrounding New Hampshire because they know Ron DeSantis will win Iowa.
Sell.
I'm going to sell. I think you're kind of right.
Yeah.
But you take it too far, in my opinion. I'll explain. I mean, I never really understood, and we talked about this on the show and off the air many times. I really never understood why Chris Sununu, one of the biggest rhino governors in America, in the least churched state in the Union, New Hampshire. I mean, I never really understood why he would be attracted to Ron DeSantis on any level other than he thinks Ron DeSantis can win. Take that away, and he lines up more with Nikki Haley. In fact, frankly, there's things Nikki Haley's to the right of Chris Sununu on, frankly, if you look at both of their 10 years as governor. Or you can say Nikki Haley is what Chris Sununu would have had to have done if he was the governor of South Carolina, but they're the same candidate, basically. Either one of those I could go for. But I mean, the heart wants what the heart wants. I mean, Chris Sununu, from a Bushy family, hardcore corporatist. I mean, Nikki Haley represents what he is for. And I think that the only reason that he would have gone with Ron DeSantis is he doesn't want Trump to be the nominee. But you've heard me say before on the show, all the things about Trump that Chris Sununu doesn't like are the things that we actually on this show do. So I never really understood that marriage to begin with. I mean, they're not aligned. And, you know, if there's anything this era has taught us is if grift is not involved, it's really hard to keep people in line either for or against Trump just based on marriages of convenience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it has anything with the pressure of DeSantis in Iowa. It's about, you know, the Kucinich principle at the very least, if not the full out Biden Republicans learning from that lesson of the ability to necromance a candidate. I mean, this is why I fundamentally believe that it is within a real realm of possibility that Nikki, all the Democrats that would be willing to vote for her, instead of, you know, an 80-year-old, people who would people who would vote Democrat. In many circumstances, would gladly vote for her. She's viable. She just is. I can't stand it, but she is.
She is because she represents a wing of the party. But I will tell you, if I were advising the DeSantis campaign, I'd stop going after her from an Iowa standpoint. You have reduced her to her lowest percentage she's going to get. There's not much of the Kasich kind of a vote in Iowa, but it's still 8 to 12%. She's going to get that. Okay. And there is no one else in the field now. It is basically a race between you and Trump now, the next 34 days or 33 days for the people that represent the heart and soul of the Republican Party. That's your target. You're wasting time, in my view, continuing to differentiate yourself with Nikki Haley. Whatever she ends up with, she'll organically lose some people on caucus night that will just say, I want to vote my vote to count, and maybe she goes in there with 13 and comes out with 9. That's part we always talk about. That's part of the organic process with the caucuses. Like I could see Vivek going in there with 6 and coming out with 2 because people are just like, well, I'm reading the room and I want my vote to count. All right, yeah. But that you can't control that if you're the DeSantis campaign. Your campaign now is one-on-one with Donald Trump, and I think whether it's your campaign or it's Super PAC, every time you run something or say something about Nikki Haley, in my view, you are wasting your time in Iowa, in my view. I think at this point it is between you and Trump. And I'll say this too, I'm never voting for Nikki Haley for president. I'm only voting for the 3 people we profiled, guys. I mean, it always cracks me up when I just tell you flat out what I'm going to do ahead of time, and then I follow through with it, and there's always a cadre of you that are stunned. How dare you? I'm shocked. I literally told you I was going to do this. And I'll just tell you this right now. All this speculation the last 24 hours about Nikki Haley as Trump's running mate, I will absolutely reconsider supporting Trump as the nominee if she's the running mate. I want nothing to do. I don't want to be a part of anything at all that reascends her wing in the Republican Party. I want nothing to do with that at all. Nothing.
I think you made your point. Next. Big Poppy says the Fed continues to raise interest rates through mid-2024, causing huge housing crash. Todd finally gets to move.
Well, the crash works on both ends, I mean,
I'm going to sell. I think they'll do the exact opposite. I think that they will attempt to do whatever else they can to not raise interest rates anymore before the election. I'm going to sell. I think the manipulation is going to go the other way.
Yeah, and I mean, what more does raising, at least since we're specifically talking about, what more does raising accomplish? I mean, you've done, it's paralyzed.
Let me further this too, because here's the thing. If you do whatever you can to keep the system afloat so the Democrats can win next year, and then if a Republican wins, then you just let all hell break loose to try to saddle their presidency with that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think the manipulation will go, excuse me, sorry about that. I think the manipulation will go the other way.
It's also just not economic. It's also not about, the economy stupid. It's not just the economy stupid anymore. A lot of this stuff has to do with what's already going on over in Europe with these 15-minute cities. They don't want you to have autonomy. They don't want you to be able to go where the grass is greener. That's part of this.
Yeah, they're okay. You understand? This isn't a way to control people.
Yes.
Yeah. This is an extension of lockdowns. I can't move. I can't leave.
Exactly.
My upward mobility.
And what did they find out? You were good with it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the housing market version of electric cars. Most of you can't afford them, so that will put you on some form of public transport, or we'll create cheaper, lesser made variations of them. And then we can just, turn off the battery situations whenever we don't like what you're posting, like a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
I haven't said this for a while, but one of the first things I used to point out when I started doing this show on June 12th of 2006, we called them liberals then, leftists, progressives. We call it the spirit of the age now. Whatever euphemism we want to use or title, there's always 2 goals: power and control. Everything is about power and control. Why? Because their true father, everything that he is about power and control as well. Chips off the old block.
Next up, Lumbee IT department says Bud Light will be a premier sponsor at CPAC.
Book it. Bet. Buy. Bet. Might be in fact, there's a better chance Bud Light will be the only alcohol you'll be permitted to buy at CPAC. than the other way around.
This is an old story. The rich kid who got in trouble and he's just going to be allowed to buy his way out.
Yeah. Yep.
Next, we go to Fedigator. Ron DeSantis will be the GOP, will win the GOP either by winning the nomination outright or becoming the nominee when Trump's nomination is removed because he's indicted and jailed.
I think there is a much higher likelihood of all this stuff than people think. Now, I don't know how high it is. I just think a lot of people think it's 0. And I know it's not that, okay? Could it be 5? Could it be 12? Could it be 18, 23? I don't know what the number is. I just know that it's not 0. And so for that reason, I will buy.
Sure.
In fact, I would, if I were, well, not that I would ever advise Nikki Haley, but if I were advising either of those two last candidates standing, I would be telling them to try to figure out how to keep your campaigns alive for as long as possible to see how this process plays itself out with the courts, and whether or not there is there a nominating convention? Is the convention in July turned into one? I mean, I would be telling them to have those. You should that kind of contingency should be in your plan. It should be.
I actually agree with that, even though I have said, and I agree, if Ron DeSantis doesn't win Iowa, he should drop out because this is amongst the first 3 states, the one he has clearly has a chance of winning. And actually, if this is Iowa being Iowa, I think he should win convincing here. But if it is close and a very narrow second place, for all the reasons Steve just said, I think he's absolutely right.
By the way, my understanding is, and we haven't talked about this yet, and this is why I've held your position the entire time, but I'm not so sure I do. I don't believe Nikki Haley or Donald Trump are going to be on the ballot in Nevada.
For the primary.
For the primary. Okay.
So for the primary, Nikki Haley is going to be on the ballot. For the caucus, it's a really convoluted process. Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis will be on the ballot.
And Haley will not.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So the caucus determines how the delegates are allotted. I don't know why they do it like this. It's really weird and confusing, but yeah, Nikki Haley is not going to be on the caucus ballot. Or not a ballot, but will not be on the caucus.
All right, hold on a second. Let me read this story since I brought it up from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. All right. The Clark County, that's the county Vegas is in. The Clark County Election Department recently sent out flyers telling voters about the state's presidential primary on February 6th. So just a couple weeks after Iowa. It will also include early voting. Every registered voter will receive a sample ballot, but only registered Democrats and Republicans will receive a mail ballot. Expect hundreds of thousands of Nevada Republicans to be outraged by what they see or don't see. Neither Trump nor Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will be on that ballot, actually. Former South Carolina candidate Governor Nikki Haley will be the only major candidate listed. Many Trump voters who already had concerns about the integrity of Nevada's election system are likely to think the worst. Nevada's elections are so corrupt, they may conclude they won't even let Trump on the ballot. If you were looking to depress Republican turnout in November of 2024, in a state, Republicans, by the way, this is my addition, almost have to win. It would be hard to come up with a better strategy. In 2021, Nevada Democrats created the current presidential primary system over Republican opposition. But what matters in presidential campaigns are delegates. Many states award delegates based on primary election results, so it's natural for people to conflate the two. State parties, however, determine how delegates are distributed. The leadership of the Nevada Republican Party, is in the tank for Trump, and it appears the Trump campaign preferred a process its allies could fully control. So the state party decided to hold a caucus on February 8th, 2 days after the primary, and Trump and DeSantis are competing in that caucus. The Nevada GOP told campaigns that if they signed up for the primary, they couldn't participate in the caucus. What the hell kind of process is this?
I was just waiting for you to stop.
I'm just, you know what? I don't know what, I'm just...
Did you sacrifice a goat on a pentagram last night?
We're the people that want integrity in the election process, right? We're the people that want to make sure, and this is our alternative. We did this. I'm just, okay. Never. You know what? I don't give a flying flip. Now I'm beginning to think about this process the way I thought about boycotts yesterday. Just go do what the hell you want. I'm going to do what I think. Okay? And I'm not joining. Don't ask me to join. My preemptive answer is no. I'm just going to do what I want.
Next, Vince says the Iowa polling makes perfect sense since when you consider that those responding are boomers with landlines who bought into Operation Warp Speed, consume a steady diet of Fox News, and hugged their grandkids through plastic during COVID. It's a small segment of the electorate.
Well,
I think there's some truth to that, but a lot of these are online polls and stuff too. So I think it's more than that. But I do think that you described what is a very reliable voting block in most GOP primaries, and how people like Lindsey Graham and John Cornyn and et al. Keep getting returned over and over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah. So for that reason, I think it's not as simple as you laid out, but because I do think you laid out a simple paradigm that is absolutely killing us, I'll buy it.
Tyler Mote says, "Mary, Did You Know" is a terrible song.
Oh, it's a total sell. It's a great song.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I just don't understand that take at all. I mean,
have you met some of
I mean,
this is a graven image, Steve.
It is absolute poetry. The child that you delivered will soon deliver you. I mean, that is an incredible lyric. I mean, I have no idea where that's coming from. I don't.
Next, we go to Data Masked, who says aliens will be a topic on the show in 2024 if they start probing or abducting pumpkin spice.
Nope. We have our new plumb line. Show us the bodies. Did you see, by the way, they didn't get the result from the last PSYOP? So the same guy is it Gorish? Is that his name?
Something
like that. He said yesterday he's coming out with more. He's got more info. All right. You have not properly reacted to his last set of revelations. So new aliens about to drop coming soon.
The Delta variant of the aliens. It's also dumb.
So no, I'm in. I'm totally in. Show me the bodies. Otherwise, show me the pilots. Otherwise, I don't care anymore. I'm out.
Aaron Day says if Republicans fail to win the presidency in this next election cycle, they will become nothing more than a worse version of the Tory party in the UK. Zero principles, conserving nothing of value, and feigning loyalty to an institution they helped kill.
So they're already there. That's already true. So that already occurred. You're too late.
DC says DeSantis should schedule a one-on-one debate with Trump in Iowa. Promote it. Goad him on to come. If and when Trump doesn't show, he talks for an hour about differentiating himself from Trump and why we must choose DeSantis.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I would do a virtual one. I would just stand up there and just play clips of Trump and respond to them. Yeah, I'd just do that.
That's how you put out the breadcrumbs and you're like, hey, where you make it where Donald Trump can't.
Yeah. I'm debating Donald Trump one way or the other.
The campaign insists that Donald Trump is showing up for this debate one way or another.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
He'll be at this one. So I'm going to debate either, we'll just put a screen there and I'll debate a virtual Trump then. Okay.
Next, we go to Nicole Mitchell. Candy canes are good.
Agreed.
Bye.
No problem.
I actually asked Bella if we could get some the other day.
I'm a mint guy anyway. So yeah, I do. By the way, I don't know.
You are a mint guy, aren't you?
I do. That's if it weren't for pumpkin spice, it'd be mint. I love mint. But they're like mint's like my sugar stepchild.
They're like pretty blue lights for you.
Yes. I got a nice gift from Spotify yesterday. So we must be doing something with them I'm not aware of. They sent me like this s'mores making machine with ingredients. It's very nice.
What?
Yeah. And the marshmallows they sent me, peppermint marshmallows, and I tried one yesterday and it was divine. It was so good. So props to Spotify.
Wow.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
I remember one of your sponsors accidentally sent me an email that I didn't figure out till later was meant for you, asking for your choice of gift, and I picked a weighted blanket, and that's still in my house and I haven't given it to you.
You Columbia House me? Todd, how many times did you send something into Columbia House when you were a kid? How many times?
I did.
I lost count.
That weighted blanket belongs to you, but I'm not.
I've got tons of blankets. It's all yours. That's the one benefit of moving as many times as we did. They just could never find me. I just had a new address all the time.
This is how they messed with a whole generation of economic knowledge, because we learned our lesson of economics from Columbia House. 1 penny, 10 CDs.
See, I've heard about Columbia House before. I wonder if this is like the deep state's master plan of getting rid of our national debt, is calling that bill in someday on all those Gen Xers who never actually, paid up. That would be brilliant.
A generation ago, it was, we're ripping off Columbia House. This generation, it's, oh no, my daughter put a nude on Snapchat, and the whole school has it. It's a lot of things have changed in one era. And we weren't exactly straight arrows either, okay?
No.
I mean, we talked like the Goonie kids. We talked like those kids,
Sure.
okay? We were not straight arrows, man. But
Especially Lindsey Graham.
This thing has devolved and accelerated at a rapid rate, no doubt, yeah.
Big D G-Man says the Detroit Lions will finish the year with a better record than the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's possible they have a better record than them right now. They're a game ahead of them right now. So I think that's possible. I'll buy.
Next, we go to Hee Haw the Viking, who has a top 5 movies that deserved a sequel but never got one. Number 5, District 9.
That's a good call. Very good movie, by the way. Yeah.
Number 4, Edge of Tomorrow.
That's a tremendous movie. I mean, that's really good, and it's not just because Emily Blunt is in it. You know, I would listen to her read the phone book, but it's really good. Edge of Tomorrow, and they've been trying to make a sequel to that for like 10 years, and then it just kind of stalls out in pre-production every single time.
Number 3, True Lies.
I'm okay with it. I mean, it's an okay movie.
I mean, every Schwarzenegger movie is a sequel, really. I mean, it just
or a derivative.
Yeah,
I hear you. Yeah.
Number 2, Big Trouble in Little China.
I got to tell you, I watched that with my son during lockdowns.
Did it hold up? No?
It didn't hold up, man. In fact, I really built it up, you know, and Noah's like watching this and he's like, oh, I am losing respect for my old man.
See, it's
in every scene.
I think,
and I watched it, and it definitely was dated, man. Definitely dated.
See, I think it would hold up just because it's. I remember like the dudes, the Asian dudes with the huge wicker hats doing lightning, and I like what it was just back then. It was like this is whack, man. But that's why I'm in. Wouldn't that still like no?
Not in 1984. Yes, 2024. No.
Kurt Russell, as an actor, the range on that guy, like what can't he do? He's just amazing.
Yeah, he's had a great career, no doubt.
And number 1, Inception.
I'm going to sell. I don't know how you make a sequel to Inception. Now, my son is a massive Christopher Nolan fan. That's one of his all-time favorite movies. That movie does hold up. In fact, I remember watching it again with him recently. I thought it was better than I even remembered.
Isn't it only 10 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think Inception needs a sequel at all. I like your list overall, but I'm going to sell on the last one.
Next, we go to John Bellick, who has this. When first seeing Adam Driver remove his mask and speak, I thought the last series of Star Wars was ruined and he would be to blame. After watching all 3 films, his acting was actually one of the few redeeming qualities and may have saved them from being a total disaster.
Oh, I completely agree. I think he's way better than Hayden Christensen. Way better. I wholeheartedly agree.
Wasn't it still a total disaster, though?
Yes, that's my point.
He's not the problem. I agree with you.
Oh, yeah, he's good.
So I agree with that argument. He is not the problem, so I'll buy.
I'm selling because he saved nothing, and apparently no one could.
Next, we go to Matt's collection.
I love when you just take bitterness to the last breath.
Oh,
I do.
I'm getting better and better by the day.
I know. Especially the more salt we get in that hair, the better the bitterness we get. I know. Yes.
Matt's collection says best movies of 2023. Nefarious left out, so Steve will participate, but definitely on the list. Godzilla -1.
What is that?
I don't even know what that is.
That's on my list to see here soon. I've not gotten to it yet. It's the latest Japanese Godzilla movie, and I am told it is great.
Oppenheimer
is great. It would be my number 1 movie of the year right now.
I can't wait. I really love.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
I disagree, and the first one is one of the greatest animated films ever made. This one is just pretty good. I'll sell.
Sound of Freedom
would be on my top 10 list right now. Yeah, for sure.
And Babylon 5: The Road Home.
I don't even know what that is.
What is that?
I'm sorry.
No idea.
Never heard of it.
Neither have I. I don't know what it is. I'm sorry.
Next, we go to C. Smith. If people were honest when the discussion broke out last week about Calvinism on the show, a lot of folks thought it was about a comic strip of a boy and his imaginary tiger friend and would have preferred it. Did you get a lot of blowback to that conversation?
No, I didn't. I got some, but not much. I got a lot of comments, but not a lot of blowback. This is why I just don't get into a lot of theological labels. You know, sometimes you guys will ask me what these labels mean, and I'll give you the best explanation. that I have. Doesn't mean it's even the best one or a good one, but it's the best that I know. But I just don't get into those labels. You know, a lot of times people have, you know, Todd's heard me say this in other iterations of this program. We're all papists. It's just a matter of where is your papacy? Is it in Dallas? Is it in Colorado Springs? Is it in Rome? We all want to belong to a tribe or a tradition. Very few of us are actually sola scriptura. Most of us really are. This is the sect. This is the tribe that I am comfortable with, that I was either converted in or grew up with or was salient. I once had a lunch with an elder at a church we used to attend, and I mean, I thought we were just going to have a good lunch, and he started asking me my views on eschatology, and I just brought up some questions I had about the traditional dispensational Hal Lindsey view. Dude lost his poop right there in a public restaurant. Like, couldn't take it. Like, I might as well have just said that Jesus just died. Jesus's body is still in the ground. I mean, it was that level of anger. Okay. You know, and I there's very few of us, I've come to the conclusion, really truly believe in sola scriptura. A lot of us really believe in a particular tradition that we want to belong to because we need to belong. And when you move 11 times as a kid, you give up needing to belong. You're used to not belonging. So I don't need to belong. I don't need to join. I'm comfortable being on my own. Maybe too much so. So I that's why I don't want to give you names and terms. Ask me what I think or believe or what I think the Bible says. I love having those conversations. But if you lead with a term, chances are I'm going to shut you down.
You realize if this show, if Trump does win and this show does like just leave politics alone and we focus more on this stuff, I'm confident we're going to make wars of religion great again. There's just no way around it.
Quickly before we get out of this segment, can I promote next Wednesday's?
Sure, absolutely, you bet.
So on Wednesday of next week, this will precede our two final year-end programs, which would be our year-end Dace group, which we have two special guests we're really excited about, and our year-end show, which will include Steve's crystal ball predictions, Todd and I's top 10 stories of the year. On Wednesday of next week, we're going to be doing a 2-hour end-of-year buy-seller hold. I'm going to start soliciting propositions for those on Twitter over this weekend. So if at all possible this week, start thinking about your boldest takes on Christmas and your boldest propositions for New Year's, the year of 2024. Just think about that for the rest of the week, if you at all possibly
Have we
can.
ever done that before? I don't know.
We did last year.
Did we do it last year too?
2 hours we did?
I believe so. At least
I think it'd be
an hour and a half with Jill.
It sounds like a ton of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Daniel Horowitz, the prophet of woe and lamentation, will join us next. Relief Factor could be the solution to your chronic pain that you have been long looking for. In fact, we're gonna tell you there's about a 70% chance that is the case. Why? Because 70% of the time when someone tries the 3-week quick start, they see such great results in those 3 weeks or less that they stick around and use Relief Factor long term. It's the drug-free anti-inflammatory. Why does that matter? Because chances are the cause of your chronic pain is too much inflammation in your joints, and that's where Relief Factor comes in. What do you got to lose? For $20, see if you don't see a difference in your pain level in 3 weeks or less with Relief Factor. Just go to relieffactor.com. Try the 3-week quick start. I mentioned just $20 at relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com. Or you can call them at 800-4-RELIEF. That's the number 800-4-RELIEF, 800-4-RELIEF, or relieffactor.com. For the final time this year, let's bring in the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. It is good to see you, my friend. I want us to spend the bulk of our time on the latest docu-dump out of the Poison Poke. Both you and I were tweeting some stuff about it yesterday, and I want you to walk our audience through those details. But before we get there, just in general, your overall meta elevator pitch view of the year that was 2023.
Never has so much been at stake. Never have we been in such grave danger, liberty-wise, security-wise, prosperity-wise, and never have we had an opposition movement that is this feckless and even subversive in confronting it. I mean, that's essentially the year. We started off with the fact that the GOP at least controlled the branch of government that you really control with a simple majority. And, I think 2023 is perfectly summarized by the conference report of the Defense Authorization Act between the House and the Senate. And every paragraph read, the House recedes. The House recedes, meaning wherever you had a disagreement between the Senate and House versions on things like the tranny agenda and the green energy stuff in the military, and basically the military doing everything it shouldn't and not doing what it should do, the House recedes. And the destruction continues, perpetuates, and exacerbates.
I think the current fracas you're seeing on social media on the right over Bud Light is a perfect encapsulation of just how we have completely failed as a movement. Because a couple of people who are essentially stand-ins for Trump, Kid Rock and Dana White, have been bought off. Now, a lot of America First people are saying, well, we won. We got no concession, no apology. We got nothing. We got absolutely nothing. They just bought a couple people off. And it's funny seeing a few people on our side, Matt Walsh, Dana Lash, a few of them push back on this and point out what a complete, fallacy this is. Our own colleague, Oron McIntyre, I saw him tweet out earlier today. If your movement can be bought because Dana White and Kid Rock got bought off, then, you deserve to lose. And I'm like, well, I know you're kind of new around here, pal, but we don't have a movement, and this is why. You can get bought off at any point in time. And I think that is the tension between the industry and the grift and the movement, and I can't think of a single time that the movement won that tension, at least not as long as I've been doing this for a living. So I think watching that just play out right now in real time, I saw more of this, going back and forth on Twitter about this during the break. To me, I think that's kind of a metaphor for the epitaph of the American right and thus America.
And I think, Steve, this is a good segue into the vaccine stuff, because whether it's the vaccine, whether it's the inflation, debt-driven inflation spending, whether it's the border, which has become an 80-20 issue. So we could sit and expose, do some good shows on it. Everyone kind of broadly agrees on the right? It's too much spending, there's inflation, the border's crazy, you have the invasion, and people are dying from the vaccines. But notice, Steve, in the year of 2023, we have not moved the needle in the actual playing field that matters on any of those issues, even including the border, 1 inch. And it's gotten worse. It's worse than before. And it's not because the public agrees with them. It's just like there's no backstop to actually use any sort of leverage, harness national attention in a way that will direct sustained, discernible outcomes. So with the Bud Light thing, it's like it was a nice talking point at the time. Yeah, Bud Light sucks. And now it's a nice talking point that, hey, we're reconciling. Mind you, Steve, we talk about this a lot with Patriot Mobile, that there are very few vital goods and services where you actually have options. That's what's very hard. We have to create parallel economies. I mean, with beer, you go into a store, there's like 50 of them. And there was nothing that special about Bud Light anyway. Relative to some of the thicker beers and whatever. I mean, it's like, come on. And we have a substantial segment of our base that dominates that market. So you have a tremendous amount of leverage over them. And we can't even do that right because it's all about the momentary talking point. There's no continuity of observation leading to a continuity of strategy leading to outcomes. And we get the outcome we have.
Well, let's go to the jab. We have another rash of docu-dumps coming out of the Pfizer trials and the FDA and what everybody knew and when they knew it. You and I profiled several of these items yesterday on Twitter, but I want you now. I'm gonna hand this over to you, and I want you to walk our audience through this latest round of revelations.
Sure. So I think it's good to just preface the fact that the deaths are still occurring. So this is from Ed Dowd's data. Dr. Pierre Corey published this recently in The Hill. So this is from those who are among those insured from employment-based or employer-based life insurance plans. For middle-aged or young middle-aged 30 to 44-year-olds, we're still at 26% higher mortality for Q2 of this year relative to 2019. So we're still at a 26% more deaths, 19% more in the 25 to 34 cohort. And overall, and this is CDC's numbers, total mortality, we're actually still at 158,000 more deaths this year relative to the baseline for the first 9 months of this year. So that's going to work out to be, 200,000 excess deaths in a year where almost nobody got the shots. So the reason why I bring that up is because what we have learned in totality, and I know you and I had to move on to other issues. We can't do this every day. But to sum up what we've learned this year versus maybe the previous two, so we all knew that the spike protein, the mRNA, the lipid nanoparticles were poison. But what we've now learned is that there's poison in the poison. So the thing was adulterated with endless stuff. Borrella, the CEO, Albert Bourla, he once said there were something like 200 ingredients in it, and then there's no quality control. So we know that the FDA, we now know from these FOIA documents, the FDA knew that there were quality control problems. I mean, imagine that. They knew it at the time that they're mandating it, distributing this to almost every person in the world, okay, 5.5 billion people, and they said that there are quality control issues with all the lots, and it turned out that the affected batches were released to the public, and the numbers of those lots were redacted in those files. And the reason this is important is because the big discovery of the past year is the biologist Kevin McKernan's discovery that has now been confirmed in multiple studies and admitted to by the FDA, the UK equivalent, the European Medicines Agencies, and the Canadians, that there are DNA plasmids, contaminants, in the vials. So in addition to the mRNA, you have DNA that does reverse transcribe, does go to the nucleus. And the reason why this is important, again, we know the spike protein, there's the hematological blood clotting, there's the cardiac, there's the myocarditis, there's certain inflammation. But when on God's green earth have we ever had a product that causes every single ailment known to man in every corner of the body? I mean, there's a South Korean series of studies, about 4 of them, but the eyes and the ears, auditory stuff and nerve stuff, and every rare thing you can imagine, every rare cancer you can imagine. There's about 25,000 different diagnoses, and now over 70% of them are accounted for in VAERS, and you add up all the other studies, you could pretty much find 100% of them. So they admitted this was a problem with the contamination. They admitted that at the time of BLA, that's the license application. So that's not that's not emergency application, right? That is the licensure.
I mean, you've gone through a full evaluation process. Yes.
At the time of BLA, the data sources in their Sentinel program, which was supposed to be a pharmacovigilance program to monitor myocarditis, are not sufficient to identify the outcomes due to lack of sufficient power to assess the magnitude of the risk in patients 12 to 30 years old. In addition, it's not sufficient to follow up on cases for recovery status and long-term sequelae, or for identification and characterization of subclinical myocarditis. And again, that's the ticking time bomb that you see, the long-term deaths beyond those who died within the first month or so after the shot. Then they admitted that they knew about cardiac conditions that were reported in the trial, that there were 9 participants who died 25 to 128 days of cardiac-related ailments in the trial group, 5 in the placebo. So, I mean, straight up, even with
nearly 2 to 1, nearly 2 to 1.
Yeah, nearly 2 to 1. Right. The point is they knew this. There was no way you didn't know it. Oh, whoops, I burnt the toast. And again, we've had a lot of these examples we've seen from various VAERS documents and other data dumps with Pfizer reports and the European Medicines Agency's reports. They knew of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of ailments, thousands of deaths within the first few weeks within the clinical trials. As you well know, Steve, they actually prepared with General Dynamics to contract for an insane degree of VAERS reports that they knew and expected. This was in August 2020 already, during the phase 2 part of the trial. And then finally, Steve, remember antibody-dependent disease enhancement.
Yes.
Kind of the more you inject, the more you infect.
Yep.
So it turns out in its pharmacovigilance plan review memorandum, the FDA referenced a condition called vaccine-associated enhanced disease to describe what we're seeing. And by the way, CDC just came out with an article that admits that more children going into the hospital now with respiratory ailments are vaccinated. They literally say it, but now I can't get it. They might have taken it down because people just put it out on Twitter, but we have the screenshot of it. You know, and finally, just in terms of the contamination. So we wrote in our book, one of our interviews was with Dr. Malone, and his big discovery was this pseudouridine, right? This chemical that was able to stabilize the mRNA that makes it stay. It stays and it goes. And we now have a Cambridge study with like 32 authors out that shows that the methyl pseudouridine produces junk proteins. Junk proteins. They have a term for that. It's not the spike. Okay? It produces in 1 in 4 people, but this is billions of cells worth, trillions, things that confuse the ribosomes in reading over the transcription. But they say, well, we can't prove it causes any problems, so don't worry about it. It's a Cambridge study in Nature. We now know there's SV40 genetic sequences that are in the vials. Kevin McKernan's finding as well, and that is associated with cancer big time. We now know that it forces you to produce IgG4, which are tolerating rather than neutralizing antibodies, and that explains why these people are chronically ill. But it also, IgG4 is associated with, you guessed it, cancer. Mm-hmm. So we have multiple mechanisms for that. Half of the we also have a study we learned this year. Half of the vaccinated people, half of them never stopped producing spike protein, at least as of 2 years. So that's just a smattering of what we might have missed the last couple of months. But Steve, we could come out with a study saying that this will kill everyone within a year, and it will not move the needle because we don't have a movement and a party to harness that information and translate that into leverage points and policy outcomes.
No, in fact, if you and I are one of the few people holding out to all the pressure to just forget about all these people and all of this, because we've got to rally around the guy running again who wrote the check for everything that you just talked about and is completely unrepentant for it. I got to go. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay. Really quick, go.
So I just really need to say this is important for all your listeners. The FDA admitted to contamination, and we now have all these studies out now. Do you really think that all the 5,000 other vaccines your kids are being bombed with, that there's not a contamination issue based on what we see?
I remember when we got to the end of writing Rise of the Fourth Reich, and you said to me on one of our last calls, do you really think this is the only time they did this? And that just stopped me dead in my tracks. And that's something I frankly don't even want to contemplate. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. We'll see you next year. All right?
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's. Take care.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Folks, if you were looking at your year-end giving, look no further than our friends over at Preborn, the outstanding pro-life ministry. And over the years, 80% of the women that they find that are considering murdering their child, and they show them the ultrasound of their baby, 80% of the time, she doesn't go through with it. And even with Bidenflation, that ultrasound is still just $28. I mean, how many of you in this audience would spend $28 for 80% odds to save a life? I know a lot of you would. A lot of you have. All right. But now they understand, though, that even if that mom says no to murder, she needs help. All right. It's typically a mom who feels alone and insecure that is considering killing her kid, not a mom who does not. So they're there with prenatal care for the mother, postnatal care, even counseling, all of that free of charge too, provided they have tax-deductible funding from people like us. If you want to make a tax-deductible gift today to Preborn, just go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. And now through a match, your tax-deductible gift is doubled too. All right. So you can get it doubled right now as well through a match at preborn.com/Steve. We got about 45 seconds. Todd, I could see you squirming in your chair as Daniel and I were talking there.
They knew all this, and they called it a pandemic of the unvaccinated anyways. Why? Not just because they're jerks. They are. But also remember, they view you as the pod people in the Matrix. You're in those pods because that's the energy that fuels everything in that movie.
Yep.
But if you remember, you'll reject it, your body, unless your mind has a narrative that it will accept. Oh, you loved the narratives that came with COVID. So you're going to keep jabbing over and over and over again. I understood when you didn't get it before COVID and I was on the lone gunman on anti-vaxxer. Fine. But now you are without excuse. If you still believe this nonsense, you're pathetic.
Did you say half of adults continue to produce the spike vax into perpetuity? Is that bad?
2 years later.
Is that bad?
I thought it stayed in your arm. Guess not. John 3:17.